Hello everyone and welcome to the second round of the FIDE Grand Prix in Berlin. Today HIKARU had the white pieces against Andrei Yesipenko and I'm sure he was looking out to win this game. Anyway, HIKARU opened up with the move 1c4, not really his usual choice. Usually he opens up with d4 or e4. Yesipenko responded with e5, knight c3, knight f6, knight f3, knight c6. And here white has a lot of options. e4 has become quite popular lately, but the classical main line has always been the move g3. Now here black has a lot of options. Bishop e4 is an option, knight at d4, but Andrei chose the move d5, takes, and after bishop g2 he played this new line, the move bishop to c5. The knight b6 had always been the classical main line. HIKARU's had a couple games here from the black side, but bishop c5 also makes a lot of sense. Castles, and HIKARU here queen c2. This move I think is slightly new. It also took Yesipenko by surprise, because Yesipenko took the first real thing of the game here. Now the point behind the move queen c2 is to x-ray the bishop on c5. Let's say black plays a move like bishop e6, white can take on d5. The queen has to recapture in order to defend the bishop, and then knight g5 will be quite nasty, because white is hitting the queen on d5, and all of a sudden white is also threatening checkmate on h7. So that is why Yesipenko played the move knight f6, getting the knight out of dodge, and here HIKARU played a3, still fairly quickly. So a3 was probably still HIKARU's preparation, but after the move knight to d4 by Yesipenko, HIKARU took his first real thing of the game. He traded on d4, and after pawn takes, he played the move b4, hitting the bishop. Now here black can take the knight on c3, but that is not ideal, because after, let's say, this whole trade, white has the two bishops and should be a lot better. He can also build a big pawn center if he wants to, put some pressure on the b file. So this is not really what black should aim for. And thanks to Hurtful, what? Thanks for the 100 gifted. Okay, I guess we will have to turn on the microwave later on. Thanks for ruining this YouTube video. Thank you so much. But thank you so much for the 100 gifted subs. Okay, I promise you guys we will turn on the microwave. But bishop e6 was played by Yesipenko. HIKARU played the move knight a4, going after the bishop pair. Rook e8, hitting the pawn on e2, trade on b6 and e3. Now here it's not that easy for black. If black trades on e3 after this whole trade, white should be quite a bit better, because once again he has the two bishops. He can put this one on the long diagonal, putting pressure here. This one is putting pressure here. He can put the rooks in the center. It's all looking very, very good for white. So that is why Yesipenko played the move d3. And the move d3, strategically speaking, is quite risky, because this pawn on d3 is sort of cut off from the chain. It can become quite a weakness later on. HIKARU played the move queen to c3, knight e4, and queen c4, hitting the knight on e4. Black played bishop f5, and HIKARU played the move bishop to b2, blundering the pawn on d2, which Andrei took, hitting the queen and the rook on f1. So HIKARU resigned, and he lost the second round game to Andrei Yesipenko. I mean, there's nothing you can do here about the fork. Very unfortunate loss. Just kidding. If you go to knight d2, there's queen c3 with a double attack on the knight and threatening checkmate. So Yesipenko did not do that. Instead of that, he played the move queen d7. Alright, so in here HIKARU made a very surprising decision. He gave up his bishop on e4 for the knight. And here Yesipenko, I think, made quite a big mistake. He should have taken with the rook, hitting the queen, and after queen c3, play f6. And after the move f3, now he has the move rook e6, and things are not that easy, because black has the idea of going rook c6 and rook c2 and suddenly create quite a bit of counterplay. So I think the move bishop e4 from Andrei was already quite a serious mistake. HIKARU played the move f3 to make sure that the dark squares around the king are covered. Bishop c6 by Andrei, and rook ac1. And things are quite difficult for black here, because you cannot move the bishop, because then you hang the pawn on c7. So rook e7 was played by Andrei, defending the pawn on c7 that way. Here HIKARU played quite a nice move. He played the move queen to f4 to make sure that he always has pressure towards the pawn that way, but also his queen is a little bit closer to the king side now. Andrei played the move f6 and rook c4 by HIKARU. Thanks Vintage for the gifted sub. And now he can double up on the c file and put pressure on the c7 pawn that way. Andrei played rook to d8. HIKARU brought in his other rook, rook to c1, queen e6, but queen e6 might have already been the decisive blunder of the game. Hikaru here found a very nice sequence. He said it already at this point. He saw the entire line, starting with b5, bishop takes, and rook e4, the move that Yesipenko missed. He's hitting the queen, and if the queen moves, he's gonna take the rook, so he can take with rook on c7 with a tempo hitting the queen. Rook to d7 to block. I mean, if you go queen e6, there's always rook takes b7, and you're just down a pawn. And black can never play a move like queen to b3, because here white has a very nice sequence. Rook takes g7, king takes g7, and queen f6 check. And if the king moves back, queen g7 checkmate. Alright, so that is why Andre played the move rook d7. Now Hikaru gave a check, rook d8 to block. And here Hikaru found the amazing bishop takes f6. And white is winning in all variations. If black takes with the queen, we trade off the queens. And all of a sudden this rook is hanging with a completely winning endgame. So Yesipenko had to take with the pawn. And now Hikaru gave a check on f4. And wherever you go with the queen, with the king, you're gonna lose. Let's say you go to f7, white gives a check here. And after, let's say, king g7, white can just trade the rooks, take the bishop, and white is a winning queen in game, because white is up a pawn. Also, these pawns are doubled, so white is winning. If the king goes to h8, we go queen b4, hitting the queen. And if you take on b4, we take on d8. The queen cannot block, because we push this king away one square. And if the king moves up, we take here. Once again, we're up the exchange. White is completely winning. And the one line Hikaru was not 100% sure about was the move queen takes e3. Because let's say black goes queen d7. Once again, we trade. We're up a pawn. Everything is weak in the black position. And white should just be completely winning in this queen endgame. So Hikaru wasn't completely sure about this move, because after pawn takes, rook takes c8. If white takes on b5, black has to move d2. And his pawn can simply not be stopped, because black also has rook c1 and d1 queen. But Hikaru said in an interview that he felt that he should be winning after someone like e4, king f2 to e3, and white should be winning slowly but surely. Alright, so Andre chose the last square. He went king to f8. Right, so now Hikaru traded, and queen b4 check. Black had to block. White takes the bishop on a3. And black takes the pawn on a3. So it's not completely over just yet, because you cannot take the pawn on b6 right away, because black has a check on c1, and he will collect the pawn on d2. So Hikaru moved up his king first. And now if black goes queen c1, white is just in time with the move queen takes d3, grabbing the pawn and defending the pawn on d2. So Yesipenko played queen c5, and Hikaru said in an interview that he felt that after this move, the game should be completely winning. The one move he was not 100% sure about was the move queen a5. White would take the pawn on d3, but after b5, things are not that clear. I mean, it's not that easy to stop the pawn in this variation. I mean, b4, queen a3, b3 is coming pretty quickly. But after queen c5, queen takes d3, b5, white had a very nice move, queen c3, and now this pawn is fully under control. So queen e7 was played by Yesipenko. King e2, and black can push his pawn to b4, but after queen c4, the pawn is really not going anywhere. So Yesipenko played king g7, queen d4, queen f7, queen g4. Very nice move. Now wherever you go with the king, I mean, let's say you go to f8, there's queen b4, and you collect the pawn, and it's game over. So Yesipenko went to h8, but now queen b4 hitting the pawn, and you cannot defend this pawn comfortably. Let's say you play a move like queen d7, all of a sudden it's checkmate. So Yesipenko had to go to e8, queen d6. Now if you go king g7, we give a check here and collect the pawn on b7. So queen f7 was played. Hikaru played queen c5, queen e8. But in this position, black simply cannot make a move. Right, this queen is stuck defending this pawn over here. It also has to guard the f8 square. So Hikaru just slowly but surely improved the position. g4, king g7, h4, queen e7. Now he played h5. The problem for black is that every pawn endgame is lost. Let's say black plays a move like h6. White can also just play queen f5, because every pawn endgame is lost, and otherwise we go queen to g6. So Andre played king g8, but after the move h6, he had to throw in the towel. Because, I mean, there isn't really much you can do. White always has options of trading off the queens with queen f5, or let's say you go queen e8, there's always queen c7, and trading off the queens that way with a winning pawn endgame. Because you can always just put this pawn on e4, push the other pawn on d4, create a protected passer, and then collect the pawns on d4. So very, very nice win for Hikaru. He grabs the lead in Pool A after 2 rounds because Grishuk and Bakro played a very up and down game which ended in a draw. But once again, Hikaru grabs the lead. Tomorrow he will play Grishuk with the black pieces. Grishuk is for sure going to go all out with the white pieces, trying to beat Hikaru and trying to take over the lead. So that game will be very exciting for sure. And we will see how that one will go.